My name is Phil Costanzo. I'm a professor at California Polytechnic State University in the Department of Chemistry and Biochemistry. I'm a synthetic organic polymer chemist, and we focus on making things that you can see and touch and play with.
Sure. My name is Eric Sapper. I'm an associate professor in the Bailey College of Science and Mathematics within the Chemistry and Biochemistry department. My background is in coatings and polymeric materials, which is essentially paint and plastic. So coming up with better computational models, ways to predict how a material will perform, how long it will last, and when it will start to break down or degrade when it's in its natural environment.
A polymer is a series of molecules that are connected together. So we start with the word monomer, mono meaning single, mer meaning unit. So you have a single unit, and then you take them and you assemble them together into a long chain. You can think of it like pearls on a necklace or links in a chain. You have a repeat unit that goes over and over and over again. That would be a basic polymer, and then you can start to get fancy making blocks and changing the shape from a linear to circular to branched, but that's the basic concept.
So when we're talking about polymers and plastics and coatings and what breaks them down, there's a whole battery of different, what we would call environmental stressors that can contribute. So think about the rubber that's in your tires on your car. When you're driving along the road, you're essentially laying down a molecularly thin layer of microplastic, because that tire is experiencing friction and heat as it's rubbing on the asphalt. It's breaking it down, and it can cause chain scission reactions. It can basically cause the polymer to come undone. And that's how paint starts to look faded. That's why PVC, plastic tubing, white water pipes, they eventually start to look yellow over time. It's because they're losing some of their molecular backbone to all of these environmental stressors.
Now I think the biggest issue isn't any singular polymer, it's the combination of multiple polymers together, because you can't separate the field stream. And that's, I think, probably the most challenging part.
Can you elaborate on the field stream?
A field stream is like what comes in from the world. So when you take all your materials every week and you dump it into that blue bin, that is a complex field. There's lots and lots of stuff, and that's actually hand sorted and really challenging to deal with. And so if someone doesn't sort something properly, or something's mixed material, then when you put it into recycling, it will actually contaminate the whole process. And so that's a complex field stream.
And the situation that the plastics and paint industry has gotten itself into is, when these materials were developed 70, 80 years ago, nobody thought about, well, how are they going to break down? How are we going to be able to efficiently get rid of them? What's going to happen to them when we put them in the landfill? People didn't think about that, because the need at the time was to find man-made, human-made alternatives to metal, to wood, to natural rubber, to other materials that were in short supply or that were too costly. Plastics and paints do a great job at that, but now we've created another problem. These plastics and paints work so well, they stick around so long, it's hard to get rid of them when we don't need them anymore. Many people are looking for alternatives, better alternatives, more sustainable, more environmentally friendly plastic materials. Young polymer chemists are now wanting to do this research. They're not wanting to change their major. Instead, they're leaning into the problem, and they recognize, look, if we're going to have systemic change in how we make polymers and plastics and bring them to the world and continue to utilize them as important materials, because they are a very important class of materials, young chemists today realize that change is going to come from within. Environmental engineers can keep looking for better ways to remove microplastics and to clean the water and to assess groundwater waste streams and ocean quality. But we have to solve the problem at the source, which is addressing how we actually make these plastics in the lab, how we make smarter, more environmentally sustainable and friendly plastics, and how we bring those to market.
And there's a lot of people who are really excited and willing to put the work in to make these materials be more beneficial and useful to society. For a long time, I think people were just trying to just make whatever we could without thinking about the end of life. And I think now in the past 10-ish years, people have really recognized end of life is very important and understand that we have to design materials being more conscious of what we're going to use in the future.
New fields of science are not going to solve this problem, right? The solution to microplastic waste is going to come from the existing systems that we have now. The change is going to have to come from within. So the more young engineers can begin to tackle these environmental engineering issues, the more chemists can not run away from plastic and polymer research, but lean into it and say, let's develop new plastics, new polymers that don't break down this way. The more people can go into policy with an eye towards the next 50, 75, 100 years of humans making decisions that impact the earth, that's where real change is going to come from.
All right, my name's Audrey.
I'm Shelby.
And we are part of Cal Poly Surfriders Club. Let's see, I'm stoked on policy.
I'm stoked on environmental justice. So we're gonna have a conversation about this.
Let's dive into it. Plastic pollution. It's all-encompassing, it's complex, and it touches every corner of the world. So we're gonna unpack a global issue that's polluting our land, our bodies, and our waters.
And this is very much not just an environmental crisis, but also a justice and human rights issue. So Audrey, what does plastic pollution policy look like on a global scale?
For the past 4 years, the United Nations Environmental Program, also known as UNEP, they have been really rallying the world together to agree upon a globally binding plastics pollution policy. And it's super complex. It's been happening for the past 4 years. There's been world conferences happening for a couple days at a time, and it's just pure chaos trying to get all representatives to agree on this policy. Yeah.
Okay, that sounds very complicated. What does this mean?
Okay, so picture this, the biggest conference room you've ever seen, and there's representatives from all around the world, and they're all talking at each other. And no one's really listening to each other. You know, their mics are on, their talking mics are on, but no one's ears are on.
So who's at this conference?
Yes, so there's 75 countries at this conference. It's almost everyone in the world. It's pretty crazy. And they're each trying to get their priorities heard and listened to.
What are their priorities that they're negotiating?
So this is where it gets a little complex. I tried to break down all these different topics, subtopics, into 3 main pillars: reduction, knowledge, and money. Okay, reduction. This looks like cutting back plastic production right at the source. And this is the most effective order change to reduce plastic pollution. Typically, plastic producing places of production happen at low-income places. So this is really where people in economic disparity get impacted the most. A great example would be in Canada. There is a spot called Chemical Valley, and basically this indigenous group of people, their home has been invaded and heavily polluted by oil producing companies. So all their waters, their fish, their bodies, you know, they have all been severely impacted, and these people are sick. They're super sick, and they're really fighting for change because they have no other choice. They're trying to survive. So as for knowledge, major petrochemical companies need to start naming and regulating all the different chemicals that are in plastics. So there's 16,000 chemicals in plastics, but only 4,200 of them are actually known. And they're known to be hazardous to human health and to environmental health. When you start recycling them and you take a plastic that has already been recycled twice or 3 times, you start combining certain polymers and monomers that weren't meant to be combined in the first place, and you start creating some really weird stuff. Some chemicals that are super hazardous and are not even known. You know, the human health effects aren't even known. Okay, the last pillar is money. And all of this is determined by money at the end of the day, because we live in a capitalistic society.
You don't say.
So figuring out how to establish a system to financially support this on a global scale, the solution, this policy, is super tricky, especially for developing countries. And this is such a vital step in order to create a strong policy that includes everyone. I mean, I think it really starts with developing countries themselves voicing that they need help and that they are developing countries and they do not have the same access to money and funds to make these changes happen. For other developed countries, they need to support these developing countries in order to ensure that they are not the ones who further, continue the process of them getting the brunt of the issue at heart.
So these 3 pillars, reduction, knowledge, and money, should be accessible to everyone, but right now they're not, which adds to the complexity. So the people who suffer the most from these disparities are marginalized communities. And globally, this looks like developing countries, but nationally, this looks like people of color living in low-income areas. And this is important, especially now with Trump's new administration, because a lot of the information that the public used to have access to, like from the EPA and from NOAA, are no longer available to educate ourselves. So it's really important that we all stay on top of being aware of what's happening around us.
Honing in on our home here in beautiful SLO, California has taken specific measures recently to reduce unnecessary single-use plastics. In 2022, the Plastic Pollution Prevention and Packaging Producer Responsibility Act, wow, a mouthful, more commonly known as SB 54, was recently signed. And so what this looks like, it mandates single-use packaging and plastic food services, specifically cutlery and takeout containers, plates and cups in California that are now going to be recyclable or compostable by the year 2032. So this is a goal set for the future. This law really shifts the plastic pollution burden from consumers onto producers. And this is a really vital step in this process because we need to start holding mega corporations, mega producers accountable for their production. So in California specifically, if producers aren't following these mandates by 2032, then they will be severely fined. So we just hit you with a ton of information, and we want to leave you guys with this segment feeling fired up, really to ask the questions, to stay engaged, to educate yourself, and really ask yourself, what is going on around me?
In the US alone, 6% of our plastic waste gets recycled. The rest of it is either buried, washed into the ocean, burned in incinerators, sitting in landfills, and the rest of it is getting shipped off to developing countries in a process known as waste colonialism. So these out of sight, out of mind tactics of just shipping all of our waste to developing countries to deal with is incredibly unfair to these communities who aren't producing any of the plastic but have to deal with all of the impacts of having all this waste that they now have to deal with. These communities are facing very serious health effects and environmental effects because of that, and they don't have the resources to deal with it. In California, this is especially of concern because as a coastal state, millions of tons of plastic are entering into our ocean, into the Pacific Ocean through our waterways. And we have a responsibility as a state and as a society to reduce this number, to reduce the effects on people elsewhere. So when it comes to plastic pollution, everyone should have a say in local decision making, especially those who are most affected by it.
And then on an international scale, it's so important for everyone to stay engaged on what's happening in the policy realm and what is happening in our world, because we are all so connected.
Yes, and we care about this planet. Oh my God, we're going so fast! Oh man. I hit one of those crust blocks.
Oh God!
I was a first year, but I came late. I was winter quarter, and it was, I think, the first cleanup, and it was actually pouring rain.
And it was a super rainy day, but we were like, let's still do it. And
I think it was one of the pancake beach cleanups. Yeah, Kenneth was definitely, I think Kenneth and Audrey were actually flipping pancakes, which kind of tracks. Yeah, that was the first, actually now, okay, it's coming back to me.
I would always sign up to drive, and I didn't really know a lot of people in Surfrider yet, but I got to drive, and I had 2 friends in my car and then 2 new people, and I remember meeting them was so fun. We had such fun talks driving out to Cayucos.
And I took my roommate, Tiffany, and we brought our plates and our utensils, and Kenneth and Audrey were flipping pancakes, and I remember being soaking wet, but having so much fun. I was just really excited in high school because I grew up here.
The pancakes were super yummy, found a lot of trash, and even though it was a little bit of a gloomy day, it was still super fun.
And so I felt very excited to just find this group of people in this community that was doing fun events and, you know, getting out even in the public and bringing them in.
When you're at a cleanup, we have these data sheets that we fill out, and each one has specific items of things that we pick up or find commonly on the beaches. And it can be like cigarette butts or small pieces of plastic or pieces of rubber or tires. So there's a lot of individual categories that make it a lot easier to know what to mark down. And at the end of the cleanup, when we collect all of them, they don't just get tossed aside. We use them to submit to our national database.
You can see it just in the events that even we do, people getting more interested and learning and being more passionate about sustainability. And when you're just by yourself or trying to start by yourself, it can feel very unattainable to make any change. So I feel like having community to kind of support you as well as learn with you, it can make it feel more impactful. Yeah.
The trash we collect, as I said earlier, is submitted to our database, and then all of our Surfrider lobbyists and people that are actually working in the policy and writing up our policy are able to use that data for their policy and to inform them. I believe it was up in Santa Cruz, they passed this policy about banning cigarettes that have a plastic filter in them along their coast. And since doing that, they've found less cigarette butts that have that plastic filter in them. So using policy about finding those cigarettes at their beaches was able to inform how they made policy to make sure that they weren't getting on their beaches anymore.
I think we do have a lot of resources, but sometimes people can't or don't know how to access them or where to access them. But we do have a lot of great local organizations who go into depth about what you can and can't recycle, or just waste management and plastic pollution in general. One of them would probably be SLO County's Integrated Waste Management Authority. They have a recycling guide on there. I don't know if this is just because I like art, have a more creative mind, and so pictures are easier for me to understand, but they have a very helpful just website that has pictures that kind of categorizes by each type of waste, and you can go in there and see exactly what you can and what you can't recycle.
You don't have to be at a cleanup to do a cleanup, which I feel is a big thing that can get forgotten. If you're at the beach for a day and you're just walking around and see trash on the ground, you might just walk by because you're out to enjoy the beach for the day. But even when you're out enjoying the beach, you can still make it better than it was when you found it.
Recently I've been able to see a lot of the things that we've been able to do, even Audrey going to South Korea and doing an event there that she was invited to. We are reaching, I don't know, I grew up here, and so SLO feels like a very small place, but seeing kind of the work we do expand outside of the community is very rewarding, and also just feels, yeah, I'm just proud. I'm proud of all of us, and it's just amazing seeing that it can be reached other places, and it's not, and even though I am grateful that we can reach people within our own community or even within the school, it is really amazing seeing it expand outside of that, and having importance on a global level, which is just kind of crazy to think about, but it's pretty cool.
Been waiting for